Something is shifting in silence. Something is separating in the unseen. Something sacred is being weighed right now. There is a movement happening beneath the surface of ordinary life that most eyes will never notice. Cities remain busy, churches remain full, songs still rise, prayers still echo, yet in the hidden places of the soul, a quiet division is taking place. Not with noise, not with spectacle, but with precision. A line is being drawn through hearts, through desires, through loyalties. Many feel only a subtle unease, a faint disturbance they cannot name, a sense that what once satisfied no longer fills the same space inside. Others feel nothing at all, wrapped in comfort, convinced that all is well. But the separation continues, patient and exact, like light slowly distinguishing itself from shadow. This is the hidden condition few speak about. Not a condition of appearances, not a condition of religious language, not a condition measured by attendance or routine. It is a condition of the inner man, where no crowd can see, where no applause can reach. The outer life may look intact, even admirable, but the unseen life tells another story. Hearts that once burned now glow faintly. Ears that once trembled at the whisper of God have grown dull beneath the constant noise of distraction. The soul, created for eternity, has been lulled by immediacy. The invisible is quietly losing ground to the urgent, the eternal to the immediate, the sacred to the familiar. Across nations and congregations, the same pattern repeats itself. There is motion without depth, activity without oil, devotion without trembling. Many have learned to speak the language of faith while slowly forgetting the weight of it. They know the songs, they know the terms, they know the rhythms, yet their inner altar flickers with only a fragile flame. The silence of devotion has been replaced by the noise of constant consumption. The waiting place has been exchanged for the marketplace. In this atmosphere, the soul grows thin without noticing at first. It still functions, still moves, still believes it is alive, but it has lost the sharp hunger that once kept it alert. Light and shadow now mingle so closely that discernment itself has become rare. What once was clearly holy now appears merely symbolic. What once provoked repentance now provokes discussion. What once demanded surrender now invites negotiation. The fire still exists, but many stand so far from it that they feel only its memory. And distance dulls danger. Distance dulls urgency. Distance dulls love. The invisible separation does not announce itself with thunder. It works through small delays, soft compromises, and quiet agreements with comfort. It works through the slow numbing of spiritual senses until the soul adapts to dimness and mistakes it for peace. Yet there are those who feel the disturbance deeply. They sense that the air has changed. They feel the pressure in moments of prayer. They notice the weight in silence. They cannot shake the impression that something once simple has become costly again. For them, restlessness is not anxiety but awakening. Their unease is not fear, but alertness. They are being touched by the edge of a greater reality that presses against the visible world. While many are falling asleep to spiritual things, these feel their hearts being quietly shaken awake. The hidden condition is not revealed by what a person claims, but by what moves them when no one watches. It is revealed by what they protect when sacrifice is required. It is revealed by what they seek when comfort offers an easier path. This condition does not belong to buildings, systems, or titles. It belongs to the secret place of the will, and that secret place is now under a gentle but relentless examination, not as condemnation, but as preparation, not as punishment, but as mercy, a separation that purifies, a sifting that preserves. Many will call this season normal. They will explain away the dullness as fatigue, the distance as maturity, the silence as stability. But the Spirit knows when something eternal is being weighed. There is a sound beneath the noise of the world, like the low trembling of the earth before a great shift. Some cannot hear it because their ears are filled with constant sound. Others hear it clearly because they have learned to listen in stillness. The same wind that comforts one will unsettle another. The same light that warms one will expose another. This is not chaos. It is not coincidence. It is not merely the cycle of changing times. It is the quiet unfolding of something foretold in the language of symbol and shadow long ago. A refining that precedes revelation. A separation that precedes glory. A hidden work that prepares a visible moment. What appears slow to human sight is already precise in eternal sight. The condition of the heart is being prepared for an encounter it cannot negotiate. The unseen line continues to be drawn even now, through prayers, through disappointments, through delays, through small obediences that no one applauds, through silent resistances that no one praises, through lonely faithfulness that feels unnoticed but is never unseen. And as this invisible work advances, a greater unveiling draws nearer. What is happening is not accident. It is not random movement. It is not the natural drift of religion. It is not coincidence. It is prophecy unfolding in silence, and it is only beginning to reveal itself. The quiet sense of division lingers in the air like a suspended breath. That subtle unease, that inner awareness that something sacred is being weighed, does not fade. It deepens. What was once only a feeling now begins to take shape, as if a voice were preparing to speak into the silence. And into this moment of hidden movement, the voice of Jesus rises again, not as distant history, but as living warning carried gently into the present hour. He spoke of days when ordinary life would continue as usual. People would eat, drink, trade, marry, and plan for tomorrow with full confidence in routine. They would speak of peace while danger moved quietly beneath the surface. They would be so immersed in the normal that they would miss the eternal standing at the door. His words were not meant to terrify, but to awaken. He described a world spiritually busy, yet inwardly unprepared, where many would assume readiness simply because they were near sacred things. Yet nearness would not be the same as knowing. Activity would not be the same as intimacy. He warned of hearts that grow satisfied with surface faith, of lamps that still look intact but whose oil slowly runs out in secret, of servants who begin well yet drift into ease as time stretches on. The danger was never open rebellion. The danger was slow neglect. The danger was not hatred of truth, but familiarity with it, a familiarity that removes trembling, a familiarity that replaces dependence with assumption, a familiarity that whispers, "There is still time," while the night quietly advances. And now these words breathe inside our moment. Churches can be full, and yet hearts can be distant. Songs can be loud, and yet oil can be low. Prayers can be many, and yet watchfulness can be rare. There is a generation that knows how to confess belief, but has forgotten how to wait. They know how to speak about faith, but struggle to remain alone with God without distraction. The false comfort settles in quietly. I am fine, I am safe. Others need this warning, not me. And this quiet thought becomes the softest and most dangerous lullaby of all. Jesus spoke of a readiness that could not be shared at the last moment, of a door that once closed would not reopen by urgency alone, of people who would awaken suddenly to their lack only when the moment had already arrived. These were not strangers to faith. These were not outsiders. These were those who expected to belong. Those who assumed that proximity was the same as preparation, those who believed that delay meant absence. The warning was never about information. It was always about condition. It was never about knowing the signs only with the mind. It was about guarding the flame with the life. He spoke to those who walk with Scripture in hand, yet may let the heart quietly drift. He spoke to those who hear often but watch little, To those who build what can be seen but neglect what only God examines, he spoke to souls who would be tempted to trade vigilance for comfort and waiting for routine. Even now, the echo of that voice sweeps through this generation. It touches crowded sanctuaries and empty bedrooms alike. It breaks through noisy worship and private silence alike. It asks the same question without shouting: are you awake, or are you only busy? Are you watching, or are you only waiting for others to watch for you? Are you ready in secret, or only confident in appearance? The fulfillment of these words does not arrive with drama at first. It arrives through subtle shifts, through hearts that grow less responsive, through convictions that lose their edge, through prayer that becomes mechanical, through devotion that becomes scheduled instead of desperate. And all the while, the world continues, as it always has. Business continues, celebrations continue, distractions multiply. The surface remains calm, while the eternal clock continues its steady movement. This is the warning that stands before us now, not wrapped in fear, but clothed in mercy. Not shouted in panic, but whispered in love. It is the warning that calls the soul back to its first hunger. That calls the heart back to trembling. That calls the spirit back to watchfulness. It is the warning that confronts the quiet assumption that tomorrow will always resemble today. This is the alert, and it is not merely approaching, it is happening now. The refining does not arrive with applause. It enters like fire in silence, like wind in a sealed room, like pressure in places the soul tried to keep untouched. What the warning awakens, the test now reveals. There comes a point when faith is no longer a concept but a weight, no longer an agreement but a surrender, no longer inherited words but a personal crossing. In this hour, what cannot pass through the fire begins to fall away. Many discover that what they carried for years was not as strong as they believed. Familiar supports weaken, old certainties dissolve, relationships shift. Paths that once felt secure grow narrow. The soul stands exposed to questions it tried to avoid. Why do I serve? Why do I believe? Why do I follow when comfort disappears? In this place, excuses lose power, masks grow heavy. The heart begins to speak what the lips never dared to confess. This is not rejection. This is refinement. This is the moment when the hidden condition becomes visible, even to the one who carries it. The refining always separates what is precious from what is merely attached. It removes what once felt essential but was never eternal. The fire does not ask permission. It only asks truth. And truth, once ignited, cannot be negotiated. The wind begins to shake what was built on habit. The fire begins to test what was built on convenience. The silence begins to confront what was built on noise. And the soul feels the trembling before it understands the purpose. Long ago, a man built an ark while the world laughed and life continued unchanged around him. The rain had never fallen, yet obedience demanded a structure for what eyes could not yet see. Another family fled a city at dawn, while the sky still looked calm, warned not to look back at what was being left behind. Others passed through waters that had never divided before, guided only by a path that appeared as they stepped forward. Each of these moments carried the same pattern: isolation, ridicule, delay. Then sudden confirmation that obedience had been protection all along. So it is in this refining hour. Many feel alone, not because they have been abandoned, but because they have been called aside. Many feel misunderstood, not because they have failed, but because they can no longer blend in. Many feel stripped, not because they are cursed, but because what would weigh them down is being removed before the journey continues. The fire does not destroy what is gold, it only reveals it. There is a loneliness that is not absence, but preparation. A silence that is not emptiness, but consecration. A narrowing that is not loss, but focus. The soul that submits to this process begins to recognize the sound of God in quiet places again. Old distractions lose their flavor. Old appetites fade. New hunger rises where numbness once ruled. What once demanded effort now awakens desire. What once felt distant begins to feel near again. Yet the refining is not gentle to the flesh. It confronts every hidden bargain made with comfort. It exposes every quiet compromise made with fear. It presses against every identity that was built without the cross at its center. The heart resists at first. It longs for relief without surrender. It seeks restoration without death. But the refining does not negotiate with the old nature. It only waits for consent to transform. If you feel the shaking, it is not because you are being discarded. It is because what cannot remain is being separated from what must endure. If you feel the heat, it is not because love has withdrawn. It is because love is purifying. If you feel the solitude, it is not because you have been forgotten. It is because you have been drawn into the secret place where strength is formed. Hold fast in this hour. Do not interpret the fire as abandonment. Do not interpret the wind as chaos. Do not interpret the silence as absence. What is being forged now will carry you through what comes next. The refining is not the end of the journey. It is the narrowing of the way. And beyond this narrowing, a greater unveiling waits. The greatest dangers rarely arrive dressed as threats. They come wrapped in comfort. They speak gently. They promise rest without surrender and safety without vigilance. The final test is not built from terror, but from ease. It does not roar like a lion at first. It whispers like a cradle song. It soothes the senses while it slowly dulls the spirit. This is the great lullaby that settles over the soul when watchfulness grows tired. The enemy has learned that distraction succeeds where open attack often fails. He paints the cage in warm colors and calls it peace. He offers fullness that never satisfies and calls it blessing. He allows the language of faith to remain while quietly draining its weight. What sounds familiar feels safe. What feels safe is rarely questioned, and so the soul drifts not into rebellion but into sleep. The great deception is not hatred of God. It is comfort without God at the center. It is confidence without trembling. It is assurance without examination. The spirit is slowly wrapped in layers of spiritual cotton that soften conviction. What once pierced the heart now barely stirs it. What once demanded repentance now invites reflection. What once provoked urgency now suggests delay. And delay, repeated gently enough, becomes agreement. Long ago, a woman walked out of a doomed city, rescued from destruction, spared by mercy. Yet her heart remained behind her. Just one glance backward was enough to reveal where her true attachment lived. The body moved forward, but the soul hesitated. The same danger whispers now. Many begin the journey of readiness, but keep their eyes chained to what they are leaving behind. The pull of yesterday appears sweeter than the call of tomorrow when the cost grows visible. There were also those who waited with lamps in their hands. All appeared prepared. All carried light. But only some carried oil in reserve. The others were near the flame, but far from endurance. They assumed that proximity would replace preparation. They believed that the moment itself would supply what their hidden life had neglected to store. When the delay ended, their lack was exposed in a single instant. What seemed equal in the waiting was revealed as unequal in the awakening. And there was a church rich in language, rich in confidence, rich in self-assurance. It saw no need. It felt no hunger. It believed itself complete. Yet it was blind to its own poverty. The tragedy was not that it lacked resources. The tragedy was that it did not know that it lacked them. Self-satisfaction had replaced desperation. Comfort had replaced dependence. And blindness had replaced sight, while the appearance of life remained intact. This is the nature of the final test. It rarely looks like darkness at first. It looks like light diluted. It sounds like truth softened. It feels like peace detached from surrender. It does not drive people away from religious spaces. It simply teaches them how to remain without remaining awake. It trains the soul to rest where it should watch, to settle where it should strain forward. The signs of false readiness are subtle: a spirit that rarely trembles, a heart that no longer weeps easily, a prayer life that survives on routine, a conscience that grows quiet not because it is pure, but because it is tired, a confidence that rests more on doctrine than on daily obedience. These are not always loud alarms. They are quiet dimmers, slowly lowering the brightness of the inner lamp. The enemy does not need to make you hate God if he can make you forget to seek him. He does not need to steal your faith if he can lull it into inactivity. He does not need to silence your mouth if he can distract your heart. And all the while he repeats the same gentle whisper: there is still time. Rest a little longer. Nothing urgent is happening yet. But the soul that listens too long to this voice begins to sleep in the waiting place. And sleep in the waiting place is the most dangerous kind of rest, for it feels like peace while it dissolves readiness. Examine yourself in this hour, not with fear, but with honesty. Ask what truly moves you when no one sees. Ask what still awakens holy trembling. Ask what still commands sacrifice. The final test is not about how loudly you speak faith, but about how steadily you guard it in secret. Awake now, while the oil can still be replenished, while the heart can still be softened, while the eyes can still be cleared. Awake now. Readiness is not preserved by emotion alone. It is sustained by quiet, faithful practices that keep the inner flame breathing, not as mechanical rituals, not as religious performance, but as living habits of dependence. The oil is not stored in moments of public intensity. It is gathered in unseen hours, in slow obedience, in daily returning of the heart to its first love. What keeps the lamp burning is not noise, but nearness. The soul remains awake when it learns to return again and again to the secret place, when it chooses prayer not only as a request line, but as a dwelling place, when it learns to fast not as punishment, but as hunger redirected toward what truly satisfies, when it confesses not as shame management, but as freedom from what quietly hardens the heart, when it seeks the word not as information, but as living breath that reshapes thought and will. These are not tasks to be checked. They are pathways that keep the heart tender and alert. Religiosity builds a structure. Relationship builds a fire. One can exist without the other, but only one sustains readiness. Many learn how to maintain appearances before others while neglecting intimacy with God in private. But the hidden condition is never fooled by language. The soul grows strong in the same place where it grows honest, where excuses are dropped, where masks are unnecessary, where weakness is not hidden but surrendered. There was a man who lived with words of faith on his lips for years, yet his prayer life had become brief and distracted. He believed he was simply busy, but in truth his heart was slowly cooling. One night, exhausted by noise and pressure, he returned to silence, not with eloquence, only with tears and surrender. Over time the fire returned, not in spectacle, but in steady warmth. What had been routine became hunger again. There was a woman who served faithfully in every visible space, yet felt increasingly empty when alone. Her devotion had become duty. Her songs had lost their weight. In a season of unexpected loss, everything familiar was stripped away. And in that stripping, she learned to sit before God with nothing to offer but her brokenness. The emptiness became a doorway. The silence became a seedbed. And the oil returned where pride had once quietly displaced it. There was another who believed himself strong because temptation no longer frightened him. He spoke confidently of grace, yet slowly stopped guarding his thoughts. Little by little, small compromises became permission. His fall did not begin with desire, it began with carelessness. Only when the damage surfaced did he realize that watchfulness had been replaced with assumption. Repentance restored him, but the scars taught him that vigilance is not a season, it is a posture. This is how readiness is lived, not in panic, not in obsession, but in daily turning of the heart toward light, in choosing intimacy over image, in choosing obedience over convenience, in choosing truth over self-protection. The oil remains when the soul refuses to drift from the fire that supplies it. The separation that feels severe at times is not cruelty. It is preservation. What is being set apart is being protected from what would drain it unseen. What is being narrowed is being strengthened for endurance. What is being cleansed is being made able to remain. The hidden work of God often looks like loss before it reveals itself as mercy. This is why the refining, the awakening, the warning, and the practice all belong to the same movement. They are not separate messages. They are one unfolding mercy, preparing the heart for encounter. Readiness is not granted in a single moment. It is cultivated across many unseen ones, and as the soul learns to live this way, something changes quietly but deeply. Fear gives way to steadiness. Anxiety softens into trust. Urgency matures into watchfulness. The heart becomes light, not because the path loses weight, but because the burden is no longer divided between heaven and earth. The separation is mercy because it rescues what would otherwise be scattered. It gathers what would otherwise be diluted. It preserves what would otherwise be consumed, and it prepares not for escape alone, but for meeting. It has never been punishment. It has always been mercy. What feels like loss has been protection. What feels like delay has been preparation. What feels like separation has been preservation. The hand that refines is the same hand that rescues. The fire that purifies is the same fire that illuminates the way. Nothing in this hidden work has been wasted. The time is short. The signs are clear. The call is gentle but urgent. What has been unfolding in silence now stands at the edge of unveiling. The heart that learned to wait in secret will not tremble in public when the moment arrives. The soul that learned to burn without applause will shine without effort when the veil is lifted. What was formed in obscurity will endure in revelation. It is not fear that carries the prepared forward. It is love made steady by vigilance. It is hope refined by patience. It is faith strengthened by submission. The awakened heart does not run from the approaching moment. It leans toward it with quiet assurance, knowing that what is coming is not disaster for the ready, but fulfillment. Stay awake, stay soft, stay near. The noise will increase, the distractions will multiply, the lullabies of comfort will grow sweeter in tone, but the voice that truly leads will remain simple and clear in the secret place. Follow that voice, guard that flame. Choose the narrow way even when the wide path appears easier. The cost of readiness is real, but the cost of neglect is final. You were not awakened to panic. You were awakened to live. You were not refined to be afraid. You were refined to endure. You were not separated to be alone. You were separated to be preserved. The same mercy that called you will carry you. The same light that exposed will now guide you. The time is short. The call is faithful. The promise is sure. Remain awake when others sleep. Remain hungry when others settle. Remain faithful when others relax. Not with striving, but with steady devotion. Not with fear, but with quiet fire. Not with pride, but with trembling love. Stay awake. Stay pure. Stay ready. What is coming is not the end of hope. It is the beginning of unveiling, and the ones who have guarded the hidden flame will recognize the moment when it appears.